Well, the Buick still runs. I decided to make a video after the initial video of Corey getting this because pretty much the whole comment section said that the car was going to be ruined. I apologize for no mics. I lost them. I don't know where they are. I don't know how I lost them. It just happened. So Corey hauled this to my shop because he didn't want to deal with it because he knew that he would just break a bolt and scrap the whole car. So we put head gaskets on it, tune up, and it seems to be good to go. When we pulled it apart, we found out that the front of the head gaskets were completely blown out, the front of both heads, right into the front cylinder. The passenger side one was the main culprit. And then the ports and the heads were like completely clogged with something. It wasn't the head gasket sealer, because that was like a copperish stuff. This was just like calcium and scale. I didn't even realize there were holes at first when I was cleaning the heads up until we jammed the screwdriver through it. Saw there was holes like this big that were clogged up. So maybe that's why it was overheating. The car did ironically have a new water pump on it. We noticed picking it up at the auction. So it might have been a problem they were changing. But here, I'll fire this thing up for you and prove to you that this isn't all just going to be movie magic. Well, I guess it still could be. There you go, the Buick 350 in action. I don't even know if we mentioned that in the other video, but this is a Buick 350, not a Chevy. You can see the distributors in the front. Back in the day, Buick, Oldsmobile, Pontiac, and Chevy all had their own completely different 350 cubic inch engines. This is about the end of that nonsense. I think by 80, people were saying was the last year, at least for the Buick engines in cars. Before they all went on to the, like, what GM called the corporate engines, where they mostly kept the Chevy V8s, except for the Oldsmobile 307, which went on for a few years. And they went to, like, the Buick 3.8 liter, and so on and so forth. But you can see it runs pretty good. Did a tune-up on it because all the spark plug wires broke. They were also original, or at least dealer ones, because they said Packard on them yet. I got rid of all but like 3 vacuum lines. I got rid of the whole nest of them. You can see the thing there, the diagram. The only thing I left hooked up was the vacuum advanced, the climate control, and the transmission. Oh, and the cruise, because I haven't seen if that works yet. That's the cruise control setup in these cars. It operates on vacuum lines and speedometer cables that go right into it. And then it has a vacuum diaphragm you see right there that actually pulls on the throttle. Don't know if that's going to work or not, but yeah, maybe. But does not eat antifreeze anymore, does not eat oil. New valve cover gasket, and it doesn't leak oil. It's not boiling over in the overflow. Runs pretty good. Sometimes it gets a slight miss at idle, I'm not sure what it is, but other than that, it's pretty good. Here, let's take it for a ride. You can see what it's like driving in a car. You can't even hear the engine running. So here we are in the lap of luxury in this thing. I probably should have mentioned when I was under the hood and I said that I hooked the vacuum up to the climate control. It's because these era GMs had the nice vacuum actuated climate, which you can hear here. Maybe. A nice hiss. As you switch from like hot to cold and stuff. So if you don't hook the vacuum line up to that ball under the hood, none of your climate control settings will work. You won't be able to switch from like vent to floor and AC and hot to cold and all that. So yeah, that has to get hooked up. In the process, the little vacuum reservoir under the hood broke. It's like a ball with a check valve in it. So I got one of them off Rock Auto. Somehow they still exist. Anyway, let's go for a ride here and see what happens. I do have to admit this car drives better than it has any right to. After I fixed it, Corey asked me to drive it for a little bit to make sure it's reliable before he picks it up. Or as he said, he can't wait to get stranded in the woods in the dark with this. So we'll let it break down on me. But it actually has like okay power. I mean, it's not fast, but it pulls away perfectly like acceptable with like just resting your foot on the pedal. Brakes work fine to me. I know Donovan said they were a little bit sketchy, but I don't know. Pedals there and it stops good. It feels like every other car of this era, at least GM cars that I drive. But we're cruising along. It's not smoking at all. There's no warning lights on, although I guess that warning light doesn't come on until like 250 or 260, so oops. But it survived. I checked the heads to make sure they weren't cracked or warped. Like I looked at them really good. I even held like a dirty piece of cardboard up to them and they looked perfectly straight to me. And I didn't see any cracks to any of the, any of the grease and carbon in the combustion chamber, so I'm gonna assume they weren't cracked at all either. Seems good. But new plugs, wires, cap, and rotor, this thing purrs. Puts out all of its probably 180 horsepower. It's kind of funny, it's a 4-barrel on it, like why bother? These Buick engines were mostly built for torque. It's like at what point are you gonna kick in with the secondaries on the big old quadrajet? It also has the nice 1970s GM power steering, well 60s too. You could drive all day with one finger on it. Nothing like driving a red velour couch with completely over-assisted power brakes and power steering. Although it is kind of nice. People make fun of these cars because they aren't a Miata. Or, something that has that whole thing to it. But it's kind of fun driving something completely at the other end of the spectrum. Like if you're just driving around, I don't really care if a car can like handle on the G-pad and stop on a dime and stuff. When you can't even feel any bumps, or like I said, you can't even really hear the engine run. You don't even feel the transmission shift. It just kind of goes. And it's not even worn out. Like the trans actually shifts pretty good. Fluid in it's good. Like you can't even hear the turn signal clicker. Ooh, 5-liter. Stick shift. Giving it some beans there. You can actually hear it shift now. This thing has like astronomical highway gears in it. Like I don't know what they are, 273, maybe even taller than that, maybe like I don't know what they went from there. I had a Malibu, a 78 Malibu, that had 236 rear gears in it. The thing would do like 70 miles an hour in first gear if you floored it and let it shift on its own. This isn't that bad, but I don't think it's far from it. It's definitely 2 something. That's what they did before cars had overdrive. So when you only had a 3-speed, when they were forced to get like good fuel economy and such, they just changed the rear gear like to the goddamn moon. It's a major reason why all this stuff from the 70s and early 80s are slugs. It's not really that the motors are like that much. They don't have that much less power than they did like in their heyday, as people really want to believe. They lost a little, but I mean it's still a big engine. It has a lot of torque. It's the fact that they went from like 373 gears to 273s really takes the sack out of these things. Plus, I'm sure this thing's pretty portly. I don't want all these car drive videos just make it seem like I just drive to Dunkin' Donuts and order some like basic white girl drink, so I'm not going to order iced coffee this time, guys. Yeah, kind of an extra large pumpkin spice coffee with cream and Splenda. Got my coffee and decided to go for a nice ride in the country here. Battery decided to get a little bit warm out, so now the window's down. Cruising 55 here on this nice backcountry road. Still wouldn't even know if the engine turned off right now, except that that could slow down. Although this thing's from like the shit era of American cars, it's really not that bad. And it rides nice and everything like I've already gone over, but it doesn't have a lot of the things that like gave the cars a really bad reputation in the late 70s and early 80s. It doesn't have like an air pump, it doesn't have a feedback carburetor, which is like a partially computer controlled carburetor. It's like a half measure between carburetors and fuel injection. And as you might have guessed, that really didn't work out that well. It has an EGR valve, which is disconnected, and it has a catalytic converter, which was somewhat already cut off. So, it's really just like a 4-barrel quadrajet on a 60s 350, more or less, with a TH350. So it's a pretty good combination. I mean, it has no compression because it's post 73. It probably has like 8.5 to 1 or something. But there's really not too much that can go wrong with it. Mechanical fuel pump. There's no computer at all. Disc in the front, drum in the back, no ABS. As silly as it sounds, it's like an era of car that'll never return. So even though most of these things got junked because they were just considered garbage a few years ago, it's kind of weird driving one now. Because really there's like nothing really wrong with it. So there you go. The old girl still runs. I just figured I'd upload this video even though there wasn't like too much to show. Mostly because most of the comments in the other video are from guys that have been running Fram filters in their cars for 50 years. They explain to us how we don't know anything about cars. So here it is. Still runs, still drives pretty nice. I don't think Corey has any plans of swapping the motor in this unless for some reason it blows up. I think he's supposed to drive it as is because it seems to run pretty good. But as long as it runs as is, it's probably going to be the only time you're going to see this thing unless we take a road trip in it or something. But yeah, pretty uneventful, but there you go. It still runs, so we didn't ruin it yet.